This was a very unexpected moment for me and the rest of the players, as a man had already been killed. After the misunderstanding was relayed,
It's fucking lemons.
because he was ignorant of the scurvy status, the other human in the group, still in the room at the time, lifts his hands up in the air and backs up against the wall. The Kenku looks to him and the human says, "You guys aren't going to kill me, are you?" The paladin diffuses the situation by saying they should focus their efforts on escaping. Upon further investigation of the door, the paladin finds a long bar at the bottom of it and decides to pull it up with a strength check and starts to lift it up, and then with the help of the halfling, they lift the door up a portion. Not enough to get a person through, at least not enough for anyone but the halfling. But if the halfling had let go, they would have dropped the door again. The paladin, with a critical success, natural 20, flings the door upwards while the halfling's holding it. And the door gets stuck in the ceiling as the halfling falls down. And the door is now open. The Kenku is still in the process of staring down the chameleon folk. With their own escape and survival taking priority, the paladin and the halfling move forward into the hallway. The chameleon folk and the Kenku, along with the last human, are the only ones left in the room as the rest of the party begins the venture into the hallway. They have no wish for further death, so they try to make amends with him. The Kenku, Kildry, asks the man's name, and the man replies, after hesitating and looking at the body, Aros. The Kenku investigates the body for information or important objects that would lead to any explanation as to why he's here. And he finds nothing but 2 silver coins in a pouch around the man's belt. The man wasn't wearing much, if anything, other than trousers and a belt with a pouch on it. The Kenku takes the 2 silver coins off the man and takes it for himself, having found no information. And then he turns to the chameleon folk, and he tells the chameleon folk that he wants him to move up in front of him. The other man takes the belt and pouch off the dead man, and then moves forward down the corridor with the rest of them. Having torches lit and dark vision, the corridor is not much of a problem for the rest of the party. They move forward and see that there is a light at the end of the corridor, reaching a doorway that is similar to the one they just left, but the door is already open. They peek into the room and see that it is lit up by 2 sconces on opposite walls. There's nothing else immediately noticeable other than a wooden platform in the center of the room with a wooden pedestal on it. Not noticing much else initially, the mouse folk moves up ahead to scout along the wall, and he sees much of the same. The room itself has wooden walls that are better maintained than the previous room that they were in. The floor is stone. The rest of the party moves in, and they don't notice anything in their investigations of the room in its entirety overall, other than the pedestal that sticks out the most. So they start to be more specific in what they're trying to accomplish. The pedestal itself has indentions in the middle of it and inputs at the top of them. They investigate the sconces to see if they have anything to do with this platform in the center. The sconces themselves are bowls in metal frames that contain oil, and they don't find out much more than that. The party investigates the room thoroughly, going along the walls and checking the corners. But with their investigations, they don't find anything that can interact with the pedestal. So the paladin goes to the wall and he attempts a strength check and punches through the wall. Through the wall, he sees a crawl space with a metal gear behind it. The chameleon folk starts to pull apart the rest of the frame around the hole to where they can move and look out into this. They see, with extra lighting, inside the corridor that they just opened up, the crawl space, the wall is lined with metal cogs and gears, inactive, not moving. They see below that the crawl space has no floor. At least they don't see a floor. And it continues to go up as well. There's just enough space for one person to attempt moving in the crawl space, but none of them attempt it in case the gears start to move. They don't want to get crushed. After discovering this crawl space full of gears and cogs and mechanisms, the party decides to finally introduce themselves to each other. The paladin is Shamash. The Kenku is Kildry. The chameleon folk is Glenn. The halfling is Janster. And the mouse folk is Bam. The Kenku rogue decides he's going to attempt an interaction with the pedestal, and he goes into the previous room, grabs the human's body, and then walks back and throws the body on top of the pedestal. The body lays there helplessly while the Kenku waits, and nothing happens to the room or the pedestal. So the Kenku decides that wasn't a really good idea of him, grabs the body, comes to the corner over here, places the body down in a sitting position, and the body hunches over. He attempts this in a respectful way, as respectful as you can. The halfling investigates the pedestal again, and seeing the same inputs, he attempts to place his dagger inside the input. The dagger goes into it, but does not do anything. He attempts this again with his short sword later. The short sword does not fit. The halfling moves to the sconce on this wall and attempts to interact with it. His interaction makes the sconce unstable and it flips out of its frame. The sconce clatters to the ground, being a bowl, and spills its oil that's currently on fire out onto the stone ground, and it's just burning oil on the ground. Luckily, no one was caught in the ensuing oil splash. The halfling stops his interaction with the sconce at that point. The rest of the party investigates the wall in this corner, meeting a wooden set of walls, and there is not much light now, especially since the other sconce is on the floor and it's kind of burning out because it's not cooling enough.
Sorry.
You have your
My
torch still.
Yeah.
And finds what appears to be a mouse hole. Pointing this out, the halfling gets the idea of asking the mouse folk to go into the mouse hole and investigate. The mousefolk doesn't want to go into the hole, but through persuasion of Janster, he finally relents and says he will. So he goes into the hole and finds that the hole itself goes into a stone wall. Unlike the other wall where you had the crawl space, the wall itself is a stone wall, and it's like it was a burrowed vermin hole. So Bam the mousefolk is investigating the crawl space, the burrowed hole, and the rest of the party is investigating the roomstone. The artificer looks at the cogs and gears and wants to try using a tool to move the cogs and see if anything happens. So he takes a hammer and he hits part of the gear or cog that has a little bit of an opening to try to turn it. And as he hits it, it starts to crank a little, but not fully, as there are others that are impeding it. And as he does that, he hears a mechanism in the center platform of the pedestal. And he points that out to the rest of the party. The party is now convinced that the structure in the center of the room is a mechanism to help them get out. Janster takes an unlit torch and places the bottom of it into one of the inputs and starts to push on it from one of the angles. As he starts to push on the torch as it's in the input, Shamash the Paladin walks up and says he'll take over from there and use his strength. So Shamash takes over and starts to make a strength check to push on it. And he notices the platform starts to shift as if it's loose, but he cannot move it. The torch itself breaks, so Janster loses a torch. After some thinking, the party comes up with the idea to return to the room they awoke in and remove the wooden bars from the walls that held them captive. So they go to retrieve the bars from the walls in the other room. Meanwhile, Bam is still in the tunnel, finds a turn, and continues to go along that until he finds a smell that he's not familiar with. Being a mousefolk, he has more sensitive smell, and he attempts to identify what this smell is, but he actually fails, having a bad roll. Returning from the second room, they go back to the bars where they were standing once before. Now it's an empty room with just the bars. Shamash the Paladin uses his weapon to break off one side of the bar, while Janster uses a necromantic spell to rot away the other end of the bar, and they get both bars. You did it at the same time, so you guys knock it out. You guys knock it out of place without him having to smack it the second time.
So we're gonna go ahead and grab that pole.
So you have 2 long poles and you're ready to party.
Yeah. We gotta chop. We probably gotta chop.
We cut them in half.
Yeah, we gotta cut those poles in half. So we got.
Oh man.
Then we shove them in the hose and then we start the turn.
Oh yeah. Better than what I was trying to do.
All right, They take the bars into the room and prop them up in the corner at an angle. They need 4 for each input in the pedestal, so they decide they're going to break them both in half and have the 4 pieces. While they're propping that up, they call to Bam, who is in the corridor of the vermin hole. Having just smelled something he's not familiar with and stopping where he was in the corridor, he hears the voices of Janster and the others calling for him to come back. So he decides not to continue down to the mysterious smell, and he leaves the vermin hole. The others are attempting to break through the two bars with their weapons. The chameleon folk is using his crowbar to try to break through it, and he actually hurts himself with the whacking of the bar with the crowbar, so he takes thunder damage, as I say. Janster moves over to the other side of the room and starts to talk to himself. He starts talking to himself in kind of a crazy looking manner. And when questioned about it, he says, "Oh, it's just the ghosts that haunt me." Janster continues on to the other side of the room. And then he moves over looking towards the body in the corner. The body in the corner has a ghost standing beside him. It's the body's previous owner, the ghost himself, looking at it.